My name is Joni Barnard, and I work in the Office of Responsible Research Practices. I've been with the organization for almost 8 years now, and I do the majority of the education and outreach for the social and behavioral sciences. And as Kim said, Vanessa and I were here um, previously and talked about some of the more basic concepts as far as human subjects research. And today we hope to give you some more practical examples as far as how some of that information really relates to what you're going to need to do. And I'm sure you will have questions, and like Kim said, if you can hold those to the end, okay? Okay, so the objectives today, types of research and the review process. That is what I'm going to primarily focus on. Um, we're also going to talk about some research examples, and Vanessa's going to go into PI responsibilities. That will be education, training, and delegation, research monitoring, record management, reporting requirements, and then things to know about non-compliance and non-compliance. So what are some examples of those things that can get you into trouble, okay? And they can be a very minor thing or it could be a very major thing. But it's just important that you have an idea of what those things are. Okay, the first few slides I'm going over very briefly because we already did this. So the very first thing you do is decide, is it research? Those are the things you have to ask yourself, and research is defined actually in the federal regulations. After you ask, is it research, does it involve human subjects? Okay, because we're talking about human subjects research. If that's what you're doing, you need IRB approval. Okay, and those are the things you need to ask. Now, again, if you're not sure, call us and ask us. There are very many gray areas, even with is it human subjects, is it not? And then also with the categories that I'm going to talk about. So if you don't know, ask. Okay? All right. So let's talk about how this review looks if we looked at everything on a continuum. Okay, so the first thing we have is it's not human subjects research. You do not need IRB approval. Okay? You only need approval for human subjects research. The next step up would be you do need approval, and it could go into the exempt category. Okay? Now, remember these categories, it's just defining the way your protocol is going to be reviewed. Your protocol is not good if it's exempt and bad if it has to go to the full board. It's just based on several components how it's going to be reviewed. So, for example, with exempt, it's going to be minimal risk and it has to fit neatly into a category. Okay, and we'll talk about some of those. It cannot go outside of the category at all. It's a one snapshot study, okay? And another thing to remember is you can't make changes to it. So there's not an amendment process. So, for example, if you're going to be doing a survey or interviews and you think along the way, maybe because it's qualitative that you want to build on it and really maybe kind of change the focus, you cannot do that with an exempt study. So you don't want to go exempt. Okay? All right. Expedited is also minimal risk, and it fits into an expedited category. Okay? So basically, this is saying you couldn't be exempt. So now we're going to see if you can be expedited. And what that means is you're still in a category. It is going to be reviewed by the board, but by one board member. Okay? Let me back up for a minute on exempt. Exempt is not reviewed by the board, but it has to be reviewed by an exempt administrator in our office. Okay, so As of right now, I don't know, maybe that'll change at some time, but you can't make the decision if it's exempt. Okay, and then you can't be exempt, you can't be expedited. It has to go to the full board. Someone tells you that. Will you say to yourself, why? Well, it may be that it's greater than minimal risk. Okay, in the medical world, it's going to be greater than minimal risk. In the social and behavioral sciences world, we don't have a lot of studies that are greater than minimal risk. But we have studies that still go to the full board based on other factors, such as it's a vulnerable population, example, prisoners. It's a sensitive topic, it's drug use, it's sexual practices, things like that. That would still go to the convened board. Okay, and then again, the risk level. Obviously, even with a sensitive question, the risk level is going to be higher. Okay, so that's how we look at it. It's just a matter of what are you doing? What is your study about? And I often tell people, it's kind of like if you say to yourself, what am I doing and who am I doing it with? You want to interview prisoners about their drug usage. You could already tell right now that's not going to be exempt. Okay? Sensitive topic, vulnerable population. All right? Okay. So I'll also say this. So there's two applications, an exempt application and another application for expedited or full board. Is exempt a little shorter? Yes. Is that a reason to change your research? No. So I'll have students ask me sometimes, how can I make this exempt? And I'm like, why would you want to do that? Because I want to fill out a shorter application. Wrong answer. All right, I mean, really, don't change your research to fill out one less page. It's not really that big of a deal, okay? So here are some of the categories. Classroom research, surveys, observation, interviews, focus groups. Category 3 is like 2, but it actually has to do with elected officials. We don't see that often. 4 is existing data. 5 is federal initiated programs. And 6, food quality and taste. Okay? Most of what you would be seeing are categories 1 and 2. Okay? So let me give an example here as far as classroom research, when I said it has to neatly fit in the category. So classroom research. All right, well, you might think that's just about everything in the classroom. No, it's not. The category is very narrow, and it has to be normal educational practices. Okay, so what does that mean? That means if you wanted to do a study in your classroom and you teach a math method with methods A and B, they already exist, and you wanted to do a study, that could be exempt. Because normal educational practices means it already is in the classroom. So let's say you read in the literature about a third method that you want to try and research in your classroom. That could no longer be exempt because that does not currently exist in the classroom. So you see how tight that gets? It's a real narrow view of what can be exempt. Okay? Okay. This will be easier probably when you, in fact, I'm going to go over here a little bit, but when you can see this close up, this basically goes through the steps you can ask yourself with determining human subjects and if it's research. So it starts with the involvement of human subjects, commonly accepted educational settings. There again, if it's yes, you could go to an exemption. And then it says and or research using tests or surveys. It could still probably be exempt. And it'll just take you all the way through of how you could make a decision. Okay? Um, and again, I really just want to emphasize that if you're not sure, ask us. We even get questions sometimes where we're not sure, and we have to have a discussion about it. Okay, so there can be some really gray areas. Okay, this slide basically, I'm not going to go into detail, but it shows the different boards that we have at Ohio State and also various committees. So, as far as the boards that we work with the most, you'll see the biomedical, cancer, and behavioral. But then there are all those other committees. Cancer studies go through a scientific review before they go to the IRB. Okay, then we can say, does it qualify for expedited? And you will see the categories there. The most common category for social behavioral is category 7. It's kind of a catch-all, really. But again, the research has to fit into one of these categories. Now, for social and behavioral sciences, 99.8% of the research falls into expedited. Okay, so we don't have a lot that goes to the full board. Biomedical, I think now they're about 50-50. Cancer, as you can imagine, most go to the full board because it's greater than minimal risk. Okay? Okay, again, another chart that you can use, a decision tree as far as if it's expedited, if it could be expedited review. Again, it's going to say if it's minimal risk, does it fit into one of the categories 1 through 7? Okay, let's talk about a couple of cases, all right? So we have a graduate student who received an award from the Ohio Arts Council. She wants to interview people about their experiences related to race and identity. Okay, now, if I was reading that as a reviewer, I've heard those words, race and identity. Right now, a flag is going to go up in my head. Is this possibly a sensitive topic? I don't know yet if it is, but I'm wondering, okay? She'll conduct audio recorded interviews with individuals from both rural and urban Ohio. She's going to ask some basic demographic questions, open-ended about ethnicity, family, religion, defining experiences related to race, both good and bad. Okay, I'm still wondering now, could this be sensitive? The information she gathers will be used to create a vignette-based fictional performance piece for the theater that reflects on the nature of race and self. The interview data will not be used for any other purposes. Okay? Now, you need to think back to your definition of research, systematic investigation, collecting information through interaction or intervention with human subjects for the purpose of contributing, hopefully, to scholarly knowledge in the field, generalizable knowledge. Okay, so things that we could ask. Is it research? Does it involve human subjects? Is our institution engaged in the research involving human subjects? Okay, now let me talk about engagement for just a second. Engagement means that you are involved with the subjects. You are interviewing them, consenting them, recruiting them, analyzing their data. You're engaged in the research. That's how you determine that. Okay, and then again, what I said about is it research? Is it systematic? Is it designed to contribute to generalizable knowledge? What is the purpose of the project? How will the data be used? Okay, here we would determine that this project's not research because the purpose is to create a work of art, a fictional performance piece. It's not intended to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. Okay? So we had all the other things in place, we thought, and here I'm worried about this race and identity issue, and it's not viewed as research. Okay? I like this example because it's gray, and it really shows how complicated this stuff is. So that's why don't feel bad if you have to call us to ask us. Okay, case 2. A geography faculty wishes to conduct a federally funded study to describe, compare, categorize, and analyze tobacco use policies and restrictions of the most heavily used public transportation systems in several countries and correlate the results to local tobacco use rates. The goal is to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. The results will be published and or presented. Data will be collected from existing databases. It's already been determined that the project involves research according to the regs. Okay, again, we go back. Does it involve human subjects according to the regulations? Okay, some more info. The investigator will contact Transit Authority personnel to request a written copy of any policies and to obtain factual information about how the policies are communicated. An email questionnaire will be sent, followed by a phone call. Only factual information about the policies will be collected. No opinions from individuals will be obtained. I'm glad this isn't a test. I might fail. Okay, again, let's look at our definition. The interviews about whom the human subject definition is not met. Okay, so the questionnaire does not collect information about living individuals. The information is factual. No personally identifiable private information. The policies do not contain private information about an individual. Okay, so let's say, what if the investigator wanted to include some questions with personal opinions on the policies or additional personal data about the respondents? Then it would be determined that it is data about living human subjects being collected, and it would include human subjects and would need IRB approval. Okay, so you need to remember that piece that's interaction or intervention, collecting data through interaction or intervention with human subjects. It's mine too. Okay, Ohio State receives a federal award for work that involves non-exempt human subjects research, automatically engages us in human subjects research requiring review. In limited circumstances, we may have the opportunity to cede review to another institution, but it's done through a process facilitated by ORP. Okay, so what might happen there is there might be an institution, IU received the funding, they're the primary awardee. We have a person here on the project. There's a chance that we would say the review can be ceded to Indiana. Okay, and I'm sure you're writing your questions down. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa